It might surprise you, but there are at least 8 industries that banks are afraid to lend to. I'm going to tell you what these are and what to do about it. And the last one's going to surprise you, and you need to be prepared for it. But first, make sure you subscribe if you want insider info on business and investing from a straight talker who has 2 decades of business and legal experience. So it's true. There are industries that banks are scared to lend to. And if you are in one of these industries, you could go from bank to bank to bank, keep getting rejected, and they may never actually tell you why, because they're not that great at telling you the real reason why you're being declined. And a lot of banks want to save face, and they don't want to look stupid by saying that, oh, we just don't understand your industry and we don't know it well enough to identify the risks, so we're going to turn you down. They're going to say something else, like it's your cash flow or the collateral or something else about the business. It's just maybe part of the case, but not the whole story. If you're in one of these industries, you're going to need to go find a specialized lender who deals in your specific industry. And it can be hard, but they are out there. And if you go on Google and you look around, you may not find one that's close by that you can drive over and walk in the door, but you can find them online. And no matter what your industry is, there's somebody that's going to specialize in it. And if it is especially risky, you'll still find a company or a bank that will specialize in it, but they're probably just going to charge you higher fees, or the interest rate's going to be higher to account for that higher risk. And before I jump into it, I want to say the reason why the banks are so scared of these industries is primarily because of elevated risk. Back in the Great Recession in 2007, 8, 9, 10, in that time frame, it was very clear that certain industries had a much higher risk of default. And now we have data going back even much farther than that, so we can easily see the industries that are a little scarier than others. And also, not all banks understand all industries. So there's going to be banks that just don't understand industry and turn it away. All right, let's get into it. These can vary by lender, but the first one is going to be contractors and home builders. This includes general contractors and subcontractors. So many banks think that the default rates for these business types, and it's true to some extent, are very high, so they just won't deal with them at all. And some of the ones that do, they just don't understand the industry that well. It's very specialized from a lending perspective and from an operations perspective too. And so you'll find banks that maybe they lend to contractors, but you have to be very well established with years and years of experience. If you're just starting out, you're newer, or you have a younger business, it can be very difficult. But you can find lenders who will lend to contractors, but you need to look a little bit deeper. All right, number 2 is restaurants. I think most people understand that restaurants are considered high risk, and even the ones that do well, it seems like there's some cyclicality. There'll be a hot new restaurant, so they can do well for 5, 10 years, and then it starts to drop off when something new comes around. And I know that's not the case for every restaurant. There's always the ones that have been around for decades and through multiple generations, and that can happen. But the vast majority of restaurants are considered high risk, and the failure rates are very high. All right, number 3 is older office buildings for investment purposes. Some of the newer office buildings that are doing okay with their occupancy rates and being able to get tenants in are actually finding financing, and they're probably not going to have too many issues. But if you own an older office building and you're just trying to lease it out, it's going to be very difficult. On the other hand, if you own a business and you're purchasing an office building because you need the space for your own business, that's considered an owner-occupied loan, and you're going to find a lender who's going to want to do that for you. As long as the business is performing well, they're not going to have an issue with it. All right, number 4 I talk about a lot, but that's gas stations. Lenders are scared of gas stations because of the environmental risk, and that's the main reason. The next industry that banks are afraid of are non-flagged or independent motels and hotels. If you have an unflagged motel somewhere or even a hotel, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get financing from most banks unless you go find a specialized lender, and even then it might be kind of hard. The next industry that banks are afraid of are churches, and this isn't really across the board, but if you have a church with a new pastor and they haven't been there for a long time, that's going to be considered high risk, and it's going to be hard to find financing. However, there are some very good lenders who focus on churches only, and I believe they lend nationwide. So if you're part of a church or a congregation and you're trying to help out and find a bank that's going to lend to you, first try your local community bank that's close by, and if that doesn't work, then go find the national lender who specializes in churches only. All right, the next one is not really an industry, but it's any startup. Banks are not structured in a way that allows them to take a material amount of risk. Their rate of return is so low that they're not going to go take a giant risk on a startup. Almost never. Now, if you own a business that's a startup and it does well, you have equity. You have basically unlimited ability to make money in the future. The bank doesn't. The bank is still stuck at the measly little percentage that they're charging you, which is even less when you take into account the bank's cost of funds and overhead. They don't want to take that risk. If you go to a community bank and you have a smaller startup, they're almost always going to say that needs to be funded by the owners themselves. That said, some banks will finance startups using one of the government guarantee programs or one of the SBA programs. The SBA is a Small Business Administration, and you don't go to the SBA, you go to a bank and they use one of those programs to help you. And what it does is it reduces the risk to the bank so that they feel better about making the loan since your business hasn't been around that long or is brand new. All right, the next one is basically the same thing, but it's any business that does not have 3 years of profitable operations. But you're going to fall into the same advice that I just gave with startups. And regarding the Small Business Administration programs, that's something I can definitely cover in a future video, so let me know if you want to hear about it. Also, let me know what questions you have. Happy to help. And as always, I wish you success.